San Francisco General Hospital Pediatric ICU. Machines beeped in a steady rhythm, fluorescent lights cast a pale glow, and the air smelled of antiseptic and something heavier, waiting. 6-year-old Maya Bennett lay curled under a pale blue blanket, her tiny chest rising and falling with effort. Her dark curls clung to her damp forehead. Beside her sat Elena, her mother, whose weary eyes had forgotten what sleep felt like. She hadn't left this chair in 36 hours, not since Maya had taken that frightening dip in oxygen. "Mama?" Maya whispered suddenly, her voice soft like silk unraveling. "I think I can hear my heart breaking." Elena froze. The words struck deeper than any scalpel ever could. Not because they were dramatic. They weren't. They were painfully honest. Bare. And Elena wasn't prepared. "Honey, don't say that," she whispered, brushing her daughter's curls off her brow with trembling hands. "Your heart is strong, baby. Stronger than any other heart I know." Maya turned her head on the pillow, those wide brown eyes filled with something no child should carry, understanding. "It's not just the sick part," she murmured, her voice catching. "It's the lonely part, too." Silence swallowed the room. Machines hummed, monitors flickered, and somewhere down the hall another child laughed. Maya didn't. Elena closed her eyes. 6 years. 6 years since Trent had walked out 2 days after Maya was born, leaving nothing but a voicemail and a folded 20 in a kitchen drawer. "I'm not ready to be a dad. Don't try to find me," he had said. 23 words that rewrote both their lives. Maya opened her mouth again, her voice barely audible. "When I watch the other kids here, they get visitors, grandmas, grandpas, aunties, and daddies." She paused. The word daddies nearly cracked her in half. Elena followed her daughter's gaze to the doorway. Just an hour ago, the little boy next door had been scooped up into his father's arms, IV dangling, spinning midair, laughter filling the hallway. A memory being made. A moment Maya had only watched. "They look at each other like they have their own language," Maya said, "like they know a secret." She turned back to Elena. "What does it feel like to have a daddy love you?" Elena's throat closed. She'd worked 12-hour shifts as a hairdresser, walked home in the rain, skipped meals, anything to shield her daughter from the ache of absence. But some gaps couldn't be filled with love alone. Before she could answer, Maya whispered, "Mama, before my heart stops, can I feel it? Just once? Just for one day?" Elena's face crumbled. She buried her head in her hands and wept. How do you tell a child that the person who should have loved her most walked away? How do you fix a heartbreak that medicine can't touch? And more terrifying than any of it, how do you grant your dying daughter her final wish when it requires the one thing you don't have? A father. The hospital's automatic doors slid open and closed with mechanical rhythm as visitors trickled out into the cool San Francisco evening. Elena stood by the vending machine, hands shaking as she clutched the lukewarm coffee she hadn't planned on drinking. Her eyes burned from lack of sleep, but her heart ached worse. She was out of ideas, out of time, and her daughter wanted something she couldn't fake with bedtime stories or extra hugs. Across the lobby, a man stood at the valet counter. He was checking his phone, coat over his arm, polished shoes that probably cost more than Elena made in a week. He was tall, clean-cut, wearing a tailored navy suit. But it wasn't the suit she noticed. It was the way he looked, unhurried, untouched by grief. He looked like someone who could be a father. He looked like hope. Before she could think, her feet moved. She walked across the marble floor, coffee forgotten, breath shallow. When she reached him, she hesitated, then finally found her voice. "Excuse me." The man looked up, startled but polite. His eyes were green, sharp, and intelligent. His expression softened when he saw her tear-streaked face. "Yes?" he asked gently. Elena opened her mouth, but the words got stuck. How do you ask a stranger to pretend to be your dying daughter's father? How do you explain 6 years of loneliness in a 30-second conversation? "I'm sorry," she said quickly, shaking her head. "This is crazy. I shouldn't..." Please, forget it." She turned to leave. "Wait," the man said, his voice calm but firm. "What did you want to ask me?" She hesitated. Then, with every ounce of strength left inside her, she turned back around and looked him in the eyes. "My daughter," she whispered. "She's 6. She's dying, and she's never known what it's like to be loved by a father." The man blinked, stunned into silence. "She's in the pediatric ICU upstairs," Alina continued, her voice cracking. "She watches the other kids with their dads and asks me what that kind of love feels like. And she swallowed. "I have no answer. I can't give her that. Not even once." Tears streamed down her face now, unfiltered and raw. She reached out, clinging to his jacket as if he were the last lifeline in a drowning sea. Could you pretend, just for a day, just one afternoon, let her call you daddy, let her believe she's not alone in this world?" The man looked at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. Julian Carter had closed billion-dollar deals. He had faced venture capitalists, lawsuits, and public scandals with unshakable calm, but nothing in his life had prepared him for this, a stranger asking for a piece of his soul, for nothing in return. "I'm sorry," Elena said again, suddenly horrified by her own desperation. "I shouldn't have asked. I know how insane this sounds. Please, just forget I said anything." She backed away. But then something inside Julian shifted, a memory of cold hospital walls from his own childhood, the ache of being alone, parents who paid bills but never attention, and the image of a little girl with a failing heart who just wanted to be loved. "What's her name?" he asked quietly. Elena froze, then answered, like it was sacred. "Maya." Julian inhaled slowly. "And your name?" "Elena." "Elena Bennett." He nodded once, firmly. "All right, Elena, let's go meet your daughter." Room 407 was quiet, except for the low hum of machines and the faint rhythm of Maya's heartbeat echoing through the monitor. The door creaked open, and Elena stepped in first, eyes red but posture composed. Maya sat upright in her bed, fragile but alert. Her cheeks had lost their color, her body thin beneath the layers of blankets. But her eyes, those deep brown eyes, were wide and watchful as soon as the door opened. "Hi, baby," Elena said softly, walking to the side of the bed. "I brought someone special to meet you." Maya looked past her mother and saw him, Julian. He paused at the threshold. Every instinct told him this was absurd. He was a stranger, a businessman, a man who hadn't held a child in his arms in over a decade. But none of that mattered the second Maya's eyes locked with his. The little girl tilted her head, studying him quietly. Then, with all the seriousness a 6-year-old could muster, she asked, "Are you my daddy?" Julian's throat tightened. There was no script, no plan, but something about her voice, hopeful and uncertain, made the answer rise up from someplace deep inside him. "Yes," he said gently. "Yes, I am." For a long, breathless moment, no one moved. Then Maya's lips parted into the faintest smile. Her arms lifted slowly toward him. Julian crossed the room before he knew he was moving. He knelt at the side of her bed, wrapped his arms around her small frame, and felt her sink into him like she'd belonged there all along. He expected to feel awkward, artificial, but what he felt instead was home. "Daddy," Maya whispered, her voice muffled against his shoulder. "Hi, princess," Julian said. The word came out naturally, though he had never called anyone that before in his life. Behind him, Elena covered her mouth with her hand, silent tears spilling down her cheeks. For the next hour, Julian sat beside Maya as if he'd known her forever. She asked him questions about stars, space, and whether people become angels when they die. He told her yes, and that the brightest stars were the ones who never stopped shining, even when it got dark. "Do you think I'll be a star?" she asked, voice small but serious. Julian smiled gently. "You already are, the brightest one in my sky." Maya giggled, a sound so pure and small it broke something open in his chest. "You're funny," she said. "You talk serious but say silly things." "That's my secret talent," Julian replied. Maya leaned against his side, her tiny hand resting on his wrist. "Do you know how to ride a bike?" "I do," he nodded. "Why?" "Because I want someone to teach me one day. You could teach me, if I get better." He didn't know what to say. The truth was, he didn't know if she'd make it. But looking into her face, he knew this much: he wanted to be there. For the bike rides, the spelling tests, the school concerts, the scraped knees, and bedtime stories. "Then that's what we'll do," he said softly. "When you get better, I'll teach you. We'll ride together." Maya smiled again, then whispered something so quiet he barely heard it. "I think my heart hurts a little less now." Julian swallowed hard. Elena, standing silently across the room, looked at him. Their eyes met, and in that moment, something passed between them. An unspoken understanding that none of this was pretend anymore. Maya had asked for one day of a father's love, but as Julian sat beside her, holding her small hand in his, he knew one day would never be enough. The hallway outside room 407 was quiet, but inside, Julian Carter, something had changed forever. He stood at the nurse's station, speaking in low tones, his phone already pressed to his ear. Not his assistant, not his CFO. He called a name he hadn't spoken in years. Dr. Serena Lin, a pediatric cardiologist he once invested in during a failed medtech venture. She owed him nothing, but she picked up on the second ring. "Julian Carter," she said, surprised. "Haven't heard from you since." "I need your help," he interrupted, his voice steady but urgent. "There's a little girl, Maya Bennett, 6 years old. She's dying. I need you to look at her records, now." There was silence on the line, then, "Send me her file." He had no legal right to request treatment, no authority to override current care. But that didn't matter. Julian wasn't used to standing by. He was used to fixing things, even when they seemed impossible. Inside the room, Elena sat on the edge of Maya's bed, brushing her daughter's hair with slow, careful strokes. Maya had drifted off to sleep, one hand still curled around the stuffed bunny Julian had bought from the gift shop without thinking. Elena looked up as Julian re-entered. "She's never fallen asleep that peacefully," she said quietly. "Not in here, not with everything going on." Julian's gaze softened. "She's stronger than I expected." "She has to be," Elena whispered. "It's the only choice we've ever had." He sat down across from her. For the first time, she saw the shift in him, not just in his face, but in his presence. He wasn't the stranger from the lobby anymore. There was purpose behind his eyes now. "I called someone," he said, "a pediatric heart specialist, Serena Lin. She's at a children's hospital in San Francisco. She's agreed to review Maya's case." Elena froze. "But we can't afford." "You don't need to afford anything," he cut in gently. "I'll handle the costs. The hospital, the transport, all of it." Her brows furrowed. "Why? You don't even know us." Julian leaned forward, voice low but fierce. "Because when I sat in that room and she looked at me like I was the most important person in her world, I knew I couldn't just walk away." Elena shook her head slowly, the fear rising again. "I don't want her to get hurt if this falls through. She's been let down before. I can't." "She won't be let down," Julian said firmly. "Not if I can help it." They sat in silence, the enormity of it all stretching between them like a chasm. Elena wrapped her arms around herself. "Dr. Lopez said her heart might only last a few more weeks," she whispered. "He said we should prepare, that comfort care might be all we have left." Julian's jaw clenched. "Then I'll fight for every day she's still breathing." "I've built companies from nothing, Elena. Navigated global crises, broken markets. But none of it matters if I can't do this one thing. Give her a chance to live." She stared at him for a long moment. "You're serious?" "I've never been more serious about anything." Elena looked toward her sleeping daughter. Maya's breathing was shallow but steady. Her lashes flickered slightly as she dreamed. She wants to learn how to swim, she said, a tear sliding down her cheek. She's never even seen the ocean. Then we'll take her to the ocean, Julian replied, after she's strong enough. After the surgery. Surgery? Alina blinked. There's still an option? Dr. Lin is developing a new procedure. It's risky, experimental, but it could be her only shot. Elena's voice cracked. What are the odds? Julian hesitated. Then, 10%. She went silent. 10%, a number so small it might as well be zero. But in a world where you're told to stop hoping, 10% is a miracle. I know it's not much, Julian said quietly, but it's more than she has now. Elena nodded slowly, heart torn between fear and fragile hope. Then we try, she whispered. It started with a phone call. Elena was sipping weak hospital coffee in the family lounge when her phone lit up with a blocked number. Instinctively, she answered. Elena, the voice, hit her like ice water. Trent, 6 years of silence, hadn't changed his tone, still smug, still smooth, still pretending to care. What do you want? She asked sharply. I saw something online, he said casually. Someone's raising money for a heart surgery for our daughter. Elena's chest tightened. Our daughter. The words felt like theft. She's not your daughter, Elena hissed. Not anymore. You made sure of that when you disappeared. I was young, I was scared. You were selfish, she shot back. You left when she was 2 days old. No calls, no support, not even a name on a birthday card. I'm here now, he said. And something in his voice sent a shiver through her spine. And I want to be involved. I have rights. You have nothing, she snapped, and hung up before he could say more. But it wasn't the last she'd hear from him. 2 days later, he showed up. Julian had just returned from a logistics meeting with Dr. Lin's hospital when he saw the commotion near the ICU entrance. Security was speaking with a man, tall, handsome in a forgettable way, dressed like someone who wanted to look important. Elena Bennett, the man said as Julian approached. Where is she? I'm the father of her child. Julian's body went still. Trent? Elena's voice came from behind Julian. Her eyes widened with disbelief, then instantly narrowed. You shouldn't be here. I have a right to see her, Trent said, stepping forward. I'm her biological father. Biology doesn't make you a father, Julian said coldly, stepping protectively between Trent and Elena. Trent's gaze shifted to Julian, sizing him up. The expensive jacket, the calm authority, the presence. And you are? I'm the man who's been here, Julian replied without blinking. Every night, every test, every nightmare. I'm the man she calls Daddy. Trent scoffed. What is this, some rich guy fantasy? Playing family to ease your guilt? Julian's voice dropped, firm and dangerous. This isn't pretend. I don't play family. I am family. I have legal rights, Trent barked, pulling out a folder. I want to be consulted on her care. Maya's voice cut through the hallway like a lightning strike. No. Everyone turned. She was standing behind them, thin and pale, ivy still trailing from her arm. But her voice was firm. You're not my daddy, she said, her chin lifting. He is my dad, she pointed at Julian. He stayed. You left. Trent's expression faltered. I didn't mean to... You didn't come when I was scared, she continued. You didn't come when I had needles or when I cried at night. You don't get to come now. You don't get to be here just because you feel bad. Elena rushed forward, wrapping her arms around her daughter. Julian stood tall beside them, the papers in Trent's hand now meaningless in the face of a child's truth. Trent didn't argue. He didn't apologize. He just stood there, suddenly exposed by a little girl's courage. And for the first time in a long time, Elena wasn't afraid anymore. He had Maya. She had Julian. And they were a family, not by blood, but by choice. The hallway outside Maya's room slowly returned to silence after Trent left, but the emotional tremor he caused still lingered in the air. Elena stood with her back against the wall, arms wrapped around her daughter as if shielding her from everything that might come next. Julian didn't speak. He simply stood beside them, steady, present, and unshaken. Later that evening, as Maya slept, Elena sat beside Julian in the dimly lit hospital cafe, a quiet corner away from beeping monitors and whispering nurses. "I hate that he can just show up like that," she said, voice low. "Say 2 words and suddenly people are asking questions. Doctors, lawyers, social workers. Like he has the right to interfere in Maya's care." Julian nodded slowly. "Legally he does, even after 6 years. He's still listed as her biological father." Elena's jaw clenched. "But he's not her father. He never was. You've done more in 2 weeks than he's done in her whole life." There was a long pause. Julian watched her closely. "That's why I want to change that," he said gently. "I want to become her legal father, permanently." Elena blinked. "Julian, I know it sounds fast," he said, "but if something happens during surgery, I don't want anyone second-guessing who has the right to speak for her. Or for you." She looked at him, tired eyes searching his face. "Do you really want to do this? For real? Not just for Maya's sake, but for us?" "I wouldn't ask if I wasn't certain," he said, and then his voice softened, almost reverent. "I don't just love Maya, Elena. I love you. You're not a burden I've taken on. You're the home I didn't know I needed." She looked down, overwhelmed. "I spent 6 years being the only one," she whispered, "making every choice alone. I don't even know how to share that weight anymore." "Then let me learn it with you," Julian said. "Let's do it together, as husband and wife, as a family." The next day, under a muted afternoon sky and a handful of rushed signatures from the hospital legal team, it happened. A wedding, not the kind Elena had dreamed of as a girl, but maybe more real than anything she could have imagined. The hospital chapel was small and plain. White walls, old wooden pews, a makeshift bouquet made of ivy tubing and paper lilies. The staff had decorated it overnight, moved by the story spreading quietly through every floor. Maya sat in her wheelchair, dressed in a simple cream cardigan and hospital socks. A crown of paper flowers made by the nurses perched on her head. Her IV bag was looped over the side of the chair. She beamed like a princess. "Are you ready, Mama?" she asked, hands folded in her lap. Elena took a deep breath, heart racing in her chest. She wore a light blue dress, borrowed from a nurse, with her hair swept up loosely. There was no makeup, no bouquet, no veil. Only purpose, only love. She turned to Julian, who stood waiting in a crisp white shirt and navy tie. He looked at her like she was the most important moment of his life. "I've never been more ready," Elena whispered. The hospital chaplain, an older woman with kind eyes and coffee breath, smiled gently at them. "Short and sweet," she said. "I know time matters." Maya nodded with exaggerated seriousness, as if officiating herself. The ceremony began. Julian took Elena's hands in his. They were rough from years of cutting hair, steady from years of carrying everything alone. He squeezed them, silently promising she'd never carry it all by herself again. "I didn't expect this," he said. "I didn't expect you, but I do know this. I choose you, not out of obligation, out of love, fierce, irrational, all-consuming love, for you and for Maya. From this moment on, we are one life, one fight, one future." Elena blinked back tears. "I never thought anyone would stand beside me like this, but you did. And now, I don't want to face anything without you, especially not the hard parts. You gave my daughter more than time. You gave her hope. You gave me, us." The chaplain smiled. "By the power vested in me by this hospital and a very creative use of emergency forms, I now pronounce you husband and wife." Julian leaned forward and kissed Elena, gentle but sure. Or out her wheelchair, Maya clapped her hands. "Best wedding ever," everyone laughed. Nurses, interns, even a passing janitor who stopped to peek in. It wasn't grand, it wasn't planned, but it was real, unshakably real. And in the quiet moments that followed, with Maya curled between them and Elena's head resting on Julian's shoulder, it was clear. This wasn't just a marriage. It was a vow to fight as a family, from now until forever. The morning of the surgery arrived wrapped in fog. At 5:42 a.m., a private ambulance pulled up to the Children's Hospital in San Francisco. Inside, Maya Bennett lay on a padded stretcher, wrapped in her favorite blanket with tiny blue stars. Her eyes were open, calm but distant, like she was already somewhere between this world and the next. Julian held her hand the entire ride. Elena sat on her other side, whispering stories from their last beach trip, even though Maya had never seen the ocean. "We'll go together," she kept saying, like a prayer. "After this, baby. After this." By 7:00 a.m., the surgical team was assembled. Dr. Serena Lin, brilliant and composed, stood at the head of the team, reviewing scans. She glanced at Julian and Elena through the glass as Maya was wheeled into pre-op. Her voice came over the intercom. "She's ready. We'll do everything we can." Julian nodded once, jaw clenched. "Please just bring her back." The doors closed. The waiting began. For the first 2 hours, Elena paced in silence. Julian sat still, eyes locked on the "in-surgery" sign glowing red above the operating room. Every so often, a nurse came out with updates. Heart rhythm stable, pressure normal, first incision complete. Time moved like wet cement. Around the 4th hour, things changed. The nurse who came out this time didn't smile. Her heart is struggling to stabilize under bypass. Dr. Lin is working to support her with ECMO. Julian stood. "Is she crashing?" "Not yet," the nurse said carefully, "but she's on the edge." They waited and waited. At hour 6, Elena broke down. Her body folded in on itself as she sat on the cold bench, head in her hands. "I can't do this," she whispered. "What if we were wrong? What if 10% wasn't worth it?" Julian knelt in front of her, grabbed her hands. "Look at me," he said, his voice low but unwavering. "We gave her a chance. That's what she asked for. Not a miracle, a chance." "But what if it costs her everything?" Elena sobbed. Julian's own voice cracked. "Then we'll be right here. We won't let her go alone." At hour 8, the monitors in the OR began to flatline. Alarms screamed. Doctors shouted. Maya's heart had stopped. Inside the observation window, Julian and Elena watched helplessly as the surgical team leapt into action. Serena Lin climbed onto the table, hands moving furiously as a crash cart was brought in. Julian felt something inside him collapse. "I can't lose her," he whispered. "She's my daughter, my little girl." Elena's fingers dug into his arm. "Please don't let her die." 12 minutes of silence. 12 minutes of chaos. 12 minutes where Maya's heart didn't beat on its own. And then a blip. A beat. Then another. The heart monitor stuttered, paused, and then picked up a steady rhythm. She was back. At hour 12, Dr. Lin stepped into the hallway. Her scrubs were soaked. Her voice hoarse. "She made it." Elena collapsed into Julian's arms. "She's not out of danger," the doctor warned. "The next 24 hours are critical, but..." Her heart accepted the implant. "She's breathing on her own." Julian closed his eyes, pressing his forehead to Elena's. "Thank you," he whispered. "You brought her back." "No," Serena said softly. "She fought. We just held the line." Inside the recovery room, Maya lay unconscious, her chest rising and falling like the gentle tide. Julian stepped in quietly, taking her tiny hand into his. "You did it, sweetheart," he whispered. "You're the bravest girl I've ever known." Elena stood behind him, tears falling freely. "She's here," she said, as if saying it aloud would make it real. "She's here," Julian repeated, the words shaky with disbelief. And in that moment, the crushing weight of fear began to melt. For the first time, hope took its place. They had made it through the darkest hour together. The next morning, light spilled gently across the white walls of the ICU recovery room. The storm of beeping machines and hushed panic had passed, leaving behind a quiet that felt almost holy. Maya still hadn't opened her eyes. She lay pale, tiny under the blankets, but her chest rose and fell in steady rhythm, stronger than it had in months. Tubes lined her arms, monitors surrounded her, but her heartbeat was her own now. Julian hadn't moved from the bedside all night. He sat with his elbows on his knees, eyes red from exhaustion but open, vigilant. Elena leaned against his shoulder, her fingers laced tightly in his. Dr. Serena Lynn entered quietly, reviewing the chart. She smiled, small and tired, but real. "She's stable," she whispered. "Everything looks promising." Elena exhaled, her body finally beginning to believe. "So the implant is working?" "Better than we expected," Dr. Lynn replied. "Her heart's responding beautifully. If her vitals hold, we'll start weaning her off sedation by this afternoon." Julian blinked, then looked at Maya again, not like a patient, but like a daughter, like someone he would never stop fighting for. Hours passed. At 2:17 p.m., Maya stirred. Her fingers twitched, her lashes fluttered once, then again. Julian leaned in, barely breathing, and then, finally, two eyes opened, cloudy at first, then clear and steady. Her gaze moved around the room, confused but calm. She looked up at Julian, blinking slowly. "Daddy?" Julian choked on the word as it caught in his throat. He reached for her hand. "I'm here, baby," he whispered, "right here." Maya's lips curved into the faintest smile. "You stayed." "Always," he breathed. "Always." Elena appeared beside them, voice breaking with joy. "You came back to us, sweetheart. You fought your way back." Maya looked down at her chest, her fingers brushing the edge of the surgical bandage. "Is my heart fixed?" Julian and Elena exchanged a look. Julian nodded. "It is, and it's strong. Just like you." Maya gave the tiniest sigh of relief. "Then maybe I can learn to swim now?" she asked weakly. Julian laughed, a sound bursting from him like sunlight after rain. "Absolutely," he said. "We'll go to the ocean. I'll teach you everything." Maya's eyes fluttered closed again, not from weakness, but peace. Not from pain, but rest. As the monitors ticked on in quiet rhythm, Julian pulled Elena close and kissed her temple. "We have her back," he whispered. "We really do." Elena nodded through tears. "It's a miracle." Julian looked at Maya, her tiny hand still wrapped in his, and knew she was more than a miracle. She was proof that love, chosen, committed, fearless, can bring someone back to life. A year later, the house sat on a quiet street just outside Sausalito, perched on a hill where you could see the bay sparkling between the trees. It wasn't a mansion, not by Julian Carter's standards, but it was home. Maya's laughter echoed down the front path as she zipped by on a purple bike, streamers flaring from the handlebars, her helmet a little too big but her confidence bigger than ever. "Watch this," she shouted, feet pumping, heart beating strong beneath her sundress. "No hands." Julian nearly dropped his coffee. Okay, maybe one hand." From the porch, Elena laughed, her hair pulled back with a pencil, a sketch pad open in her lap. She'd started drawing again, something she hadn't done in years. Peas did that. So did watching your daughter ride a bike when she wasn't supposed to survive the year. Julian came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "She's getting fast," he said. "She's getting fearless," Elena replied, leaning into him. "She's not afraid of anything anymore." He kissed her temple. "She takes after her mother." They watched Maya loop around the driveway again, her voice singing some made-up melody about rainbows and sharks. She had a scar on her chest now, long and pale like a battle line, but she wore it like armor, not a wound. Inside the house, framed photos lined the hallway. In one, Maya held her first paintbrush. In another, she stood on a hospital bed beside Dr. Serena Lynn, both of them flexing their arms like champions. But the centerpiece was a picture taken 6 months ago at the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the Maya Carter Foundation, a nonprofit Julian and Elena had built together to fund pediatric heart care for low-income families. Their mission was simple: give every child the same fighting chance Maya had. That afternoon, as the sun dipped low behind the hills, Maya came crashing back into the house, cheeks flushed, breath quick. "Daddy," she called out, can we go to the beach tomorrow? Julian glanced at Elena, grinning. I promised you, didn't I? Maya nodded. You promised me everything. He crouched down and hugged her tight. And I meant it, he whispered. Everything, Maya. Always. She squeezed him back, then ran off to find her swimsuit for tomorrow and every day after, because now she had a future. Now, life was just beginning. The stars came out slowly that night, scattered across the navy sky like someone had spilled light across velvet. Maya lay between Julian and Elena on a picnic blanket in the backyard, her head resting on her father's chest, one hand tucked into her mother's. A cool breeze rolled through the tall grass, carrying the scent of lavender and cut lemons from the garden. They said nothing at first, just breathed in the stillness, the peace that came after the storm. Then Maya spoke. Daddy? Yes, love? Do you think people can really choose who they love? Julian smiled, not the kind of smile you wear, but the kind that grows from somewhere rooted. I do, he said, and I think the best kind of love is the kind we choose. Maya nodded. She was quiet for a moment, then whispered, Thank you for choosing me. Julian's throat tightened. He wrapped his arms around her, holding her close. I didn't just choose you, Maya, he said softly. I found you, and from the moment I did, I never let go. Elena looked at them, eyes glistening in the starlight. And under that endless sky where dreams once felt too far to reach, Maya whispered one last truth. Love didn't come from where I came from. It came from who stayed. And that's what made it real. Because family isn't always written in blood. Sometimes it's written in the moments someone refuses to walk away. And that kind of love lasts forever.